another. You are live.
Thank you so much, Aya. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session on sales strategies, brand positioning, and messaging, where I'm going to introduce you to our consultant, Brita Duncan. Brita has over 20 years of experience in the retail and wholesale textile and apparel industry. She spent 10 years at a top fine jewelry showroom and became known for her strong relationships and passion for growing up-and-coming fine jewelry brands. Brita currently works as a business development consultant with select jewelry designers and has immense experience building and merchandising brands, managing and growing sales goals, creating market opportunities, and working on website design and development. So Brita has extensive information and knowledge on all these things, and we encourage you to take notes and ask questions that she'll address at the end. So without much ado, Brita, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Hopefully we have some returning members who remembered from our last session when we were talking about targeting your customer and all the questions that you kind of need to start thinking about in order to position your brand and know who you're selling to, which is going to be the focus for today. So if you all took notes during the last session, hopefully we can start building on that in this session. So today we are going to focus on finding your USP, which is your unique selling proposition, talking about brand positioning and messaging, how to take your story and start telling it to your customers, and then planning for market. So how do you funnel down and take all that information and start planning your sales strategies for market. And this includes putting together things like lookbooks and line sheets, making sure your photography is in order. And I'll have some examples for us to go through. So starting with branding, it's important for designers to really have a firm grasp of how their products will be marketed and how to create that captivating story that creates your unique selling proposition, which is also known as your USP. So if you hear me referring to a USP, that's a unique selling proposition. So it's something that helps you stand out from everybody else in the marketplace. Defining a brand is really the seed from which your overall sales and marketing strategy will grow and really helps you connect and build trust, which is so important with your target customer. And that's whether it's your end consumers or retailers that you're targeting. Brand identities need to engage with the consumer on several different levels, and those are personal, emotional, and functional. Creating your brand story and planning on how you will communicate that story really needs to involve all of these factors. It's about you as the designer, your creative world and inspiration, as well as your technique and materials. It's about creating these emotional touch points that your product brings about in the consumer. When brands develop a story, it gives their audiences a very clear understanding of what the brand is about and what it's trying to do. So as the market gets more and more cluttered, this is really what's going to help set your brand apart, which is so important. So all of your branding materials should reflect this story. This goes from your logo to your imaging to your line sheets and even your packaging. Successful branding really means consumers immediately understand what your product is. Being clear about your brand purpose and creating a point of difference is key in attracting consumers and reminding existing consumers why they already buy from you. So it's important that this message is clear and consistent across all channels, from your website to your social media to what you're putting together and presenting to retailers as your collaterals, such as the lookbooks and line sheets. So as I mentioned last week, the most important first steps in becoming retail ready are research-based. Who is your target customer and what is your unique selling point? building a compelling story starts with this initial research on who your target customer is, and then moves into what are your brand values. So you want to start by asking yourself the who, what, why, how of your brand. I find these questions on the slide here really kind of help narrow down the focus when you start going into branding and putting your brand story together. So the who is your basic information, your brand name, and your mission or values. What is the specifics on your brand and the products you're selling? What are you selling? Why is what makes your brand stand out? What do you hope to achieve with your products? Or what do you hope that your consumers get out of your products? How is how you go about telling your brand story, which is what you will build your content around across all of your channels. It's so hard to think of fashion as something that you can't touch and feel and see for yourself, especially given the focus on digital sales platforms and trade shows. Brands are really starting to realize the power of digital in attracting and growing their customer base. The level of access consumers have to brands online today is growing day by day. So really ensuring that you build a really strong omni-channel strategy with a compelling story will really help set your brand up for success. Having a unique selling proposition, having a story that is yours alone is really going to help set you apart and help you stand out from everybody else in the marketplace. So, as I said, in today's information flooded world, the stakes are really high when it comes to earning the attention of potential buyers. So making a genuine connection with your customer is absolutely vital for brand and sales growth. How you make this connection is through storytelling. Consumers have more choices than ever before, and increasingly stories are becoming the difference between good and great sales and marketing strategies. So the words you use to describe your business are essentially the voice of your brand. So ensuring that you choose the right words to accurately convey your brand story can help build brand awareness and loyalty. And having an internal vocabulary that you can consistently rely upon can help you save time and energy on a day-to-day basis. It's important to remember that brands aren't selling only products and services. You're not just selling the products that you make. You're also selling the lifestyle behind your brand and the meaning behind your brand. So this is why it's so important to focus on telling your brand story. You want to make your story personal. Storytelling can not only bring up emotions, but also can give meaning to the clothes or jewelry or accessories that you're selling. If you have any personal motivation or a particular mission behind your brand, you want to share it with your customers. With the help of online platforms, such as your website or social media, combining storytelling with visual elements, your story can really easily be told in so many different ways now. And in the long run, storytelling can enhance your relationship with the customers and again, strengthen your brand image. Overall, I know sometimes it can feel like an uphill battle as a small independent designer competing against all the big brand designers out there. How do you stand out and compete against these brands that have big budgets and marketing teams on their side? The answer to this is authenticity. There's really already a story at the heart of your brand, which is you, your customers, your craft, your inspiration, and it's up to you to convey that to the consumer. So many big brands, I think, want what you have as a small designer because you're so close to your product and to your consumers that you really can speak to them directly, which a lot of the big brands, as you get diluted by hiring more and more people, can be a little bit tougher to capture. Customers today recognize and respect authenticity, and what, as I mentioned, big brands spend to achieve, you already have. So your brand story really should be polished, audience focused, so really focusing on the consumer and the points that really touch them and hopefully will grab their attention. It's building that emotional connection and essentially the trust between you and the consumer. So whatever your angle is, just always keep in mind that your story should be authentic. And how do you do that? You need to understand your audience. So you always want to begin with your target customer. So that's why I always say that the most important thing to start with when you're trying to become retail ready is to know your target consumer. Because everything comes back to knowing that information. You want to outline your core values. So really just jot down what your core business values are and build your story around that and put that at the heart of your content. And this means, you can put it verbally, so explicitly writing what your values are. And also demonstrating, showing through imagery, especially on Instagram, where images and videos are so key. Show what your values are around that. You want to define your voice. So you need to have a tone of voice for your brand, which may not necessarily, this is important, may not necessarily be the same as your personal voice. So this is your brand's voice, your business's voice. So you really want to take some time to define what that is and create guidelines on exactly what that is and what that isn't. And to do that, go back to the questions from the previous slide on the who, what, why, and how of your brands. So essentially you want to build almost, I call it a brand Bible. So anybody who joins your team, who comes into your team, can read this information and know immediately, okay, this is where the brand stands. This is how to speak like the brand, and everything flows seamlessly. And then just constantly test your copy and content, on your website, on Instagram, see what is working, what's resonating, see what's not resonating. And you can always, adjust and tweak from there. So some examples of this to show you. First, I have Carolina Bucci, who is a jewelry designer. Actually, I'm going to go to her website first. Let's see if this works. So she is a London-based jewelry designer, but she is Italian. She comes from a family who has been making jewelry in Florence for generations, going back to the first jewelers in Florence. So it's really, her brand is focusing on heritage and Italian craftsmanship. She's really known for this, she calls it the Florentine finish, which is kind of like this sparkly gold. So everything on her website really kind of focuses on that. She has a section here on her atelier. And you can see here that this is where she goes into her brand story. So I think that this is a good place that you can go back to and read it and see how she tells her brand story, how she focuses on the heritage behind her brand, to really kind of build that trust with the customer, knowing that they're going to be buying a quality product. And then equally on her Instagram, she's also telling the story. Here, Florentine Fine Jewelry, very simple bio, and then a link to her website. She has the important highlights on her brand and storytelling, and then all of her images either focus on the jewelry, how to wear it, pictures of her in Italy, very clear, strong Italian reference. So when you come through and you scroll through this page, immediately, this is a fun jewelry brand based in Italy, and there's storytelling throughout, focused on design and heritage and quality materials. Jennifer Bear is a hair accessories brand, I believe based out of New York. Very fun, definitely caters towards a bridal customer. So everything on her website, like look at these beautiful butterflies, definitely focuses on, telling a fun story around her brand. Like here she has, shop gifts for the romantic. There's a lot of romance behind her brand. for the woman that likes to go out to special events, or it's a wedding, building up that story through her brand. And you can kind of scroll through her website too. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see about, here are some brand values. So we firmly believe in safe and sustainable business practices. And then it scrolls over, it talks about the brand, how everything is made by hand. So that is just a good example of telling values for your brand. And again, her Instagram, this comes up, also tells the story. So here you have different collections and her highlights. And then, really focusing on the product, but also lifestyle. So lots of women like dressed up, going out to events. So, immediately the customer that she's targeting is the woman that likes to dress up and go out to events and celebrate, and, very romantic and fluid. Kuyana is a handbag and accessories line. They're very much focused on the concept of less is more. So they really want you to buy products and have them last. So again, you can kind of scroll through their website, go to their about page. Here, I'll just hover over this again. So you can see here, they have a whole section on sustainability. So this is very important to them. So they have a sustainability pledge. They talk about their factories. It's very transparent, their materials, lean closet. So again, they want you to buy less is more, fewer, better wardrobe. So their whole story reflects that. So again, you can take some time and go through their website and see how they tell their brand story. And again, their Instagram, it's very clean, very muted, very much into earth tones. So you get a very strong feeling of their passion behind sustainability and the quality of their products. And finally, Herdware is this really small brand I actually discovered on Instagram. They are a very small brand based in England, focused on heritage design and using wool, I believe harvested from Scotland or northwest of England. So sustainable heritage knitwear using the finest wool from the northwest of England. Right there, front page, on their homepage of their website. This is immediately putting out their value statement for the customer. So you immediately know what this brand stands for and what the story is behind the brand. And then they go into more about the knitwear, imagery all reflects, beautiful styling. So, they're targeting the customer that, wants to dress up, but have fun. And like, I love this image with the tulle skirt with their knitwear. It helps them definitely stand out in the marketplace. And again, their Instagram also reflects this. So focusing on the materials, focusing on lifestyle, how to wear it, how it's made, very cleanly laid out again. So it's not just a product focused Instagram. It's really telling the story behind the brand. So again, I think, take some time and go through. I know these slides will be saved, so you can go back and look at these brands and really kind of read through for yourself a little bit more on how they tell their brand story to help give you an idea of how you can now tell your brand story. So with branding and storytelling in mind, how do you convey your unique selling proposition to buyers when you're ready for store outreach? So there are a few things that you need in place in order to help with this process of becoming a retail ready. Establish digital presence, which is your website and Instagram, which is what we just looked at. So you can see how, you really need to know what your story is and have a fleshed out website and Instagram that tells that story, so that when you're reaching out to buyers, they're going to go to your Instagram first, and then most likely your website if they want to see more about pricing. or to learn more about your story. So you really want to make sure that those are fleshed out before you start sales outreach. And then there's photography and lookbooks and line sheets and putting those together. So for photography, I know there's another course on photography. So I'm just going to touch on some basics here that I think are important when building out lookbooks and line sheets. Photos here are meant to be used as a selling tool. So brands really need to ensure that they're presenting their products and their brand to their full advantage. Some key image considerations include still life, which is product focused with multiple angles. You know, if it's a jewelry item, it's front, side, back. If it's a handbag, it could be front, side, back. Also, if there's different features on the handbag, versus editorial, which is more conceptual images that convey the story or collection inspiration. This could be on model, how to wear it, or it could be just a styled editorial image. So that shows, you know, the inspiration. If it was a nature inspired collection, you could show it with some nature colors or leaves or branches, something like that. Your individual product images always need to be photographed on a white background. This is really important because it keeps it clean, for your line sheets and your lookbook, but also, you know, stores will rely on you for these images. They might rely on you for the images if they're going to put the product on their website, or even just when they're sending messages to their customers. If it's a text message or something, they usually images help them. Images need to be well lit, sharp, and to scale so that they accurately represent the product's materials. You want to keep the layout simple and consistent. And again, always photograph multiple angles, front, side, and back, so you give the customer all the information they need when they are looking at your product online. Here are just a few examples just to show you. So here you can see I have the handbag. This is just the product image. I only included, just for space, one image per product. But you know, if you start looking at websites, you can start seeing how there's multiple product angles for the product photos. And then here, how to style it. So again, this is a nice raffia tote shot on the beach. So you get the summery vibe, but she's still wearing a sweater. So it could still be fall, winter. Here you have a really fun pendant. And then you see it on, which is really important, for scale. So that's really key for jewelry pieces in particular. And then also how to style it. So here she has it layered with all these other necklaces, which is a very big trend right now in jewelry. And then glassware, and then some table linens, and then styled shots. So you can see, you know, how do you set up a tablescape with the product to make it look, I want to be at this table in the summer, so inviting, or I see myself styling my table with these beautiful linens like this. So again, you can see the juxtaposition, but the importance of both kinds of images that you need to have. A lookbook is a commercial photographic representation of a collection, which designers compile each season to present that collection to buyers and press. They're really easy to create in Word, PowerPoint, or Photoshop. You can upload a PDF to issue, which I'll show you in a minute, or use a website like FlipSnack for a professional looking lookbook that looks like a real printed lookbook that flips and as you open it. And I have an example, I'll show you what I mean by that. Lookbooks typically include a mix of product photography with more editorial images. So the focus on the lookbook here is really just to give an overall impression on the collection. So you don't want to get too heavy into product details or pricing. It's more of an overall image introduction. So you should convey the theme of the collection. So you can, you know, have a little paragraph about the inspiration behind the collection, the meaning of the collection, and then convey that meaning through relevant props and styling tools in your images. And you want to include a brand overview and a designer bio. So lookbook is something that you really will use a lot when you're reaching out to new stores. You know, you don't want to overwhelm them with too much information. So you just want to give them the basics. So almost a brand overview, a little bit about you as the designer, a little bit about your brand, your values, going back to that storytelling. What is your story? So, you know, a page on this, a page or two is great to include here, and then you get into your collection. And then you also want to make sure you include your contact information and any website and social links that are easily clickable for buyers, so that if they want to learn more, they can go to those links and learn more about you, and also contact you, which you might think is you know, basic information, but a lot of people leave that off and then they don't know who to contact. So make sure that that is all clearly laid out, especially if you have, you know, more than one person handling sales for you. You want to make sure they're reaching out to the right person. So this is, again, just a quick example. This is a jewelry brand I work with. This is obviously from many years ago, but I feel is a good example to convey this collection. So I have, you know, the main cover page with an image, what the collection is, the season, a designer's notes page. So with this collection, most of the stores I work with are familiar with the brand, so I don't have to go into too much who the brand is. If it was more catered towards new stores, I would have a little bit of an introduction on the brand. So this is really just focused on designer's notes, which is talking about the inspiration behind the brand. So the artist was really inspired by Paul Klee, the artist, you know, really poppy, fun colors and artistic designs and layouts. So that goes into that there. And then the next page has some jewelry images with just like very minimal information about the jewelry. So just kind of some product images and then a little styled image. And then the remaining pages are, you know, telling that story and inspiration through the editorial images. So some close-ups of the jewelry on the art, and then some on model images with this, you know, poppy colored background that all goes back to the same color palette and storytelling behind this collection. Another example, this is a homewares brand, kind of the opposite, very clean, very minimal. You know, here they have their contact information on the cover page. Here they have a little bit about the brand, you know, taking everyday objects in your home and, you know, elevating them, making them feel luxurious. And obviously these are not all the pages in their lookbook. I just, again, chose to highlight key pages to show you. And then a page about the materials that they use and what, you know, makes them stand out from others in the marketplace. Excuse me. So, you know, they highlight unique materials. Our products are crafted from reclaimed wood, recycled glass, and honest materials sourced responsibly across Europe. And then they have all of the symbols here. So again, very cleanly laid out. It doesn't get into heavy about details on the products, just very clean imagery and information. This is an example of issue, which I mentioned. So I'll just click on this here. So this is a website. You can do it for free. You basically take a PDF of your lookbook and you can upload it onto issue. And then you can send the link out to buyers and they can go through and flip through and see how it flips open like a book. So it's just a very professional looking way to do a lookbook. You don't have to do it this way, but I think it looks kind of good. So here again, you can see styled imagery with some product imagery on the left, more styled imagery. Here they have about this collection from the designer. Everything is very, you know, all the styled imagery goes along with the color theme of the collection. So that is an example of that. And again, I have the link here. So you can always go back and take a look at that. But you can also just go to this issue.com It's issuu.com. And if you just type in catalog or lookbook, anything that's public will show up, and you can get great ideas from that. You know, if you're struggling to come up with how do I style a lookbook, I'm so overwhelmed, you can go to issuu.com and just search catalog or lookbook. Sometimes you can get styling ideas or content ideas that way as well. Again, here are the resources that I mentioned in order to put a lookbook together. You know, basic Word, PowerPoint, Photoshop, if you're familiar with those programs. Here's Issue. FlipSnack is like Issue. It creates that kind of flippable lookbook. So you can take a look at that as well. And then Canva is another great platform. I've actually been using it a lot more now. It's kind of the easy version of Photoshop and helps you. They have templates for everything. So you can put together a presentation, you can put together a lookbook, you can put together posts for Instagram. It's very, very useful. So I recommend taking a look at that as well. Line sheets. So a line sheet is different from a lookbook in that it's a catalog that shows your product line to prospective wholesale customers. So you really, you know, are detailing the product information here. Key information to include in your line sheets is an attractive page layout that doesn't appear crowded or contain tiny print, and also evokes the style and personality of your products. You want to make sure it includes the brand name and contact information again, the name of the particular collection featured, and the season and delivery dates, an introductory page with a brief description of the collection, an individual product photos showcasing your products. And these photos should be clear, professional quality images that are large enough to show details of your products. You don't want to use your lifestyle or editorial images here unless they're used for cover pages. So a line sheet is really just your photography on white background. And next to each image on your line sheet, you want to make sure you include the item name and style number so that when buyers go to place an order, they know what they're ordering, the materials that are in that product, available options, if there's, you know, different fabric options, material options, color options, you want to make sure that's listed. The measurements, this is key, especially when you're working remotely, and wholesale and retail pricing. Most stores now definitely take your suggested retail pricing. So make sure that you list both of that. That helps to create consistency across markets, especially when selling online. And then you want to organize your styles by classification and price. So for example, if it's jewelry, you want to put earrings together or rings together or necklaces together. And then how to create line sheets. You can use Photoshop again, or you might be able to use Canva. There might be a template in there that can help you use something like that. You can buy a template online. A website like Etsy sells templates. They're pretty cheap. You know, they could be, I don't know, $7 or $10 US. And I think you could just buy that template and then figure out how to use it from there. And then there's also online platforms, which are very expensive. So that is only if you're able to do that. But platforms like Jor or New Order, Brand Boom, I use with another brand that I work with, and that is not as expensive, which is helpful and is an easy way to help get line sheets to buyers digitally. So another example here of a line sheet. So here, again, this is not all the pages of this line sheet, but we have a cover page, we have an About Us page. So here, telling the brand story, and then collection of colors. So here they start to go into their products, information with pricing. I know the type here is small, but there's pricing here, excuse me. And they go into the products they have, and then they have a section all the colors that these products are available in. So if you want, this placemat or this tablecloth or these napkins, you can choose the color there. And then they have a section about their packaging and the experience, because again, it's all about storytelling. You're still telling your story, even though it's a line sheet with just product information and pricing. You still want to convey a sense of luxury to the buyer. Another example, this is a jewelry designer. So a cover page, about the designer, and then this is just one page as an example, but again, clearly laid out, products on white background, and then information about the product. So she has the SKU, a small description, the sizes that the rings are available in, and then the wholesale and suggested retail pricing. And then she also has an end page on order policies or terms. Sometimes it's good to include that on your line sheet as well. For example, if you have a minimum order, if you charge shipping, what your return repair policy is, and how you accept payment. So overall, as our current market is predominantly digital, you really need to think and plan on how you can best present your brand and products to a buyer digitally. So it's really taking the time to create a polished and professional sales kit. And that will help you approach boutiques with confidence. And it's also better to have your sales kit, so your lookbooks, your line sheets, making sure that your website and Instagram are telling your brand story already. You really want to make sure that those are all ready to go before you start presenting or approaching buyers, because it's so much easier to have everything ready than scrambling to throw it together at the last minute. So really organize your collateral, make sure all the files are small enough to be emailed or sent over. If you're DMing with somebody of the buyer on Instagram, you want to make sure that a file is small enough to just attach and send that way as well, or WhatsApp. And then all that's left is to plan your approach and prepare your presentation, which is really what we're going to be getting into in our final session, which I know is in a few weeks. So you have time. I recommend to everybody, these slides will be saved online on the platform. So, I recommend going back, looking at the examples I provided, looking at the platforms that I provided, play around with creating your line sheets and your lookbooks, answering those questions on who you are, what your brand story is. And next time we meet, we will be going over, how you take all that information and how do you start approaching buyers? What do you say? Where do you approach them? So that will be our final session. So for now, I'm happy to take any questions, if there are any.
Yeah, we have one question. Someone asked, are the Instagram image guidelines the same for B2B customers?
Yes, so you're telling your story the same way, no matter if you're reaching your direct consumer or your buyer. So you want to make sure that you're, having that content mix of product focus, lifestyle focus, and things like that. So it's still the same story, no matter if you're reaching your end consumer or your buyer, because your buyer, when they're buying products from you, they're thinking of their end consumer. So it all ties together.
Great, that sounds wonderful. I don't see any other questions. Let's just give them a few minutes. It was a lot of great information.
I know it's a lot
so
of information.
Yeah, everyone's probably just taking some time to consume it. I have a question actually. You mentioned about the lookbooks. In your experience, has it changed now that people are more digital? The formats, like a lot of, would you be using perhaps maybe like a video format for a lookbook? Is that something that you think buyers do well with, or do you prefer having the still images and the examples that you showed?
Yeah, I think definitely still images. I think if you want to incorporate some video, that's great. Just keep it short because you know, a lookbook a buyer can easily flip through and get a clear impression of, you know, is this brand right for me or not? If it's a, you know, a 10-minute video, they're not going to sit through a 10-minute video to see if the brand is right for them or not. So if it's something more a quick video, say you put a reel together on Instagram and you want to include that on the lookbook, that's possible. Something that's like quick and snappy. I think that's a great idea. And you can, you know, insert that or attach that separately and then email that you're sending out to a buyer. But that's a great question because, you know, videos, I know, especially on Instagram and websites are the big focus right now. But when you're reaching out to a buyer, you still want to make sure you capture their attention and it's a very quick moment. So you just make sure it's a short, condensed video and not, you know, a very long overdrawn video because they're not going to spend the time to go through that.
Yeah, just to add on to that, we just got a question from Salma. Her brand is called Salma's Maternity Wear. So just adding on to that, she said, is it a good idea to present my brand on video by telling my story? So in one of the examples you gave, they spoke about having sustainable materials or, you know, the unique selling point. So how would that be presented in a different way? And especially since sustainability and is like such a big part of brands today, what do you think is a good way of, you know, sharing that message through all, you know, maybe the lookbook or other collateral?
Yeah, definitely focus on the materials that you're using, how you're making the clothing, and kind of going back to, let me see if I can flip to it here. I think I still have it open. So the herd wear. So it's totally different. It's not maternity. This is knitwear, but you can see how they're very clearly telling their story about sustainability, heritage knitwear, where the material comes from. So, you know, for your maternity line, you know, it can be very similar storytelling, just with different imagery, depending on, you know, where your brand is based, where the product is based. You know, something like this, as you're scrolling through, this could be a little video showing, focusing on the material, you know, how the product is made, something like that. Like here they show, you know, the lambs with the wool. Yours could be, depending on what your material is, could be an image showing, you know, what that is. So you get a clear impression of, okay, this comes from this animal or it comes from, you know, this place in the world. I get a very clear impression on, you know, the fact that it's sustainable, it's very boutique driven, a small brand that isn't focused on, you know, over assorting or creating too much waste in the world, things like that. So definitely there are different ways to play around with your story, and, you know, focus on the mother that wants a sustainable product, you know, for herself to wear while, you know, she is carrying a child. So there are definitely different elements that you can pick out and play with, as an example.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We also have another question. Someone's asking, should all the social pages have the same content or do we have to make it different?
So all your message should be consistent across all your social pages. I think right now, Instagram is the one that buyers specifically look at. I don't think they're looking really at Facebook or Pinterest or other social channels. They really are focused on Instagram. So you can change up the imagery if you want, or how you tell that story, but the same story should be consistent across all channels. I mean, I always find that similar or same posting on Instagram, Facebook is fine. And then Pinterest obviously is a totally different animal where, you know, you can build out the value columns for your brand. But it should definitely be a consistent message across all channels. It doesn't have to be like a one-to-one exact same, but definitely you want to make sure that you're telling the same story and the same values behind your brand on each channel.
Great. I don't see any other questions so far. Maybe we'll just give them a minute or two. I think what you said was, I think you covered all the bases, so people are probably very comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know my next session is not for a few weeks. So again, take time to go through this. If you have any questions, just jot it down, and then in the next session we can go over more details again, and kind of hopefully see how you can go from beginning to end, from starting out, targeting your customer, building your brand story, building out your lookbooks and line sheets, and then talking to buyers and getting orders, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions, so I think everyone is happy. Just to add on to that, we've got a poll section. If you see on the auditorium at the top, if you can kindly click on it and just give us some feedback so we can know how to improve these sessions. And I'll also just drop in our email address in the auditorium. So if you have any questions for Brita, please share them on email once you go over the slides, and then we'll forward them to Brita and she can address them in the next session, if that sounds good for you, Brita.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, we just got one before we wrap up.
Okay.
We have one question. How often do we engage with our followers or put up new content on our social media channels? And then, yeah, maybe that can be the last one.
Yeah, that's an important one. That's a good question. And I know it often comes up with the new designers. How often should I be posting and engaging? And the answer is, it's going to vary depending on your brand, but in order to keep up with the algorithm on Instagram, you need to be posting frequently. I think once a day, once every other day is fine. And it doesn't always have to be, a main storytelling post. I kind of go into tiers. So you have your first tier, which is all about the product, all about the brands. Second tier is more storytelling, inspiration. Third tier is just like straight third party information, things that inspire you that you see on the platform. So really taking those 3 tiers and building them out. It takes work. I know it's a lot to do Instagram, but build out a calendar for a month at a time or 2 weeks at a time, and try and schedule your posts ahead of time to make it easier. And then if somebody comments, always try and reply right away. Keep up with that, because engagement is very, very important on Instagram and helps you in the long run with their algorithm. So I always hate to say frequent posting, but it kind of is important on Instagram today, just to help you, because the more you post, the more you engage, the more Instagram promotes you and puts you at the top of people's feeds. So you can start slow at the beginning, don't overwhelm yourself, but definitely try and move up to, a few times a week.
Great.
And this is both, both for posts in the feed and in stories.
Yeah, stories are really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. Great. Yeah, well, we have one more. I think now everyone's got the questions coming
Everyone's
in.
writing in. Okay.
So we have a question saying, how do you use your value proposition as background to tell your story?
Yeah, so that's how I was trying to show some examples. I definitely would go back to the brands that I shared. And, depending on what your values are, that kind of is your story. If you are a sustainable brand and you want to make sure that you have minimal waste, make sure that that is a part of your brand story. So reflect that in your brand story. What's your background? Have you always been designing it doesn't have to be this brand, but have you always been a designer, or, you know, were you in a totally different field and saw an opportunity in the marketplace for a sustainable brand that uses X materials and wanted to create this. Just as an example, a jewelry brand I work with makes foil-based jewelry done in the Georgian technique of the 18th century, where gemstones were backed in foil because they didn't have the stone cutting techniques that they have today. Obviously, we don't need this today because they're gem cutters and you have beautiful gemstones, but the designer fell in love with the process and thought there was an opportunity in the marketplace to bring a really handcrafted, beautiful jewelry collection to the end consumer. So kind of telling your story like that will start to flesh it out. Just think of your background, your inspiration, the opportunity you saw in the marketplace for your product, and go from there.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think there was a lot to take in. So I think a lot of people are gonna have new ways of implementing some of the tips that you've shared, and can't wait to see everyone implementing this. I think we've got a lot of good feedback, and everyone's always sharing the things that they learned in the sessions on Instagram, and it's really nice to see how they're growing. So thank you for the session. And yeah, it
You're
was really, really
welcome.
interesting.
And yeah, any questions, just forward them my way.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone, and see you in the next session. Bye. Bye, Bruda.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.